Thanks for joining me on this edition of Olsem Wanem. The national policy on the disabled and the elderly came to be in 2010. It was launched in 2009 to serve, be included, and to recognize the rights for persons with disabilities in the country. This year, from June 17th to the 21st, all the stakeholders will collaborate to review the current policy. The Department of Community Development and Religion has taken the lead to work with other organizations that have had a hand in advocating and caring for persons living with disabilities. As part of the review, questionnaires have been made to gauge the public's input on the specific needs for disabled persons, carers and institutions who need better resources to assist them.
From the Department of Community Development perspective, so to speak, responsible for the policy submissions to NEC and to Parliament to develop legislation and a way forward. And so at this time, our relationship with the stakeholders and with those that are representative of the people with special needs is very much hands-on. Again, it's long overdue. We need to update the policy. Also, yes, with regards to the CRPD in September, or the ratification, the process has come through Parliament. Both the Speaker has done his bit. Myself and the Minister, Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs, Ruming Pato, we will be ready to lead a delegation in September to the United Nations. But the starting point, and the one that I firmly believe in, that belongs to this department, is to ensure that every citizen of this country, at birth right up to where they are in the elderly category, must have a birth certificate. Because when you look at the contents of filling out a birth certificate, there's a category there that asks you, whether you are have some impediment in any way or you are disabled in any way. There's some category there. So already being able to capture people's individual data on a birth certificate, then from the birth certificate you can actually identify and lift out and classify, and then we can actually know our numbers, exactly what kind of type of disability, and then channel them to the appropriate service provider to assist us with, and that kind of thing. So it is a process that we want to enter into. It must happen, we must step up to the plate, but it's not something that can be solved overnight with some of these very specific areas. But we have already a starting point, and that's with birth certificates, and enabling that everybody across the board has a birth certificate. And from out of that, we extract the needed information and build on our policy.
Education plays a vital role in creating awareness for individuals and communities to prosper. People with disabilities also have the same right to an education starting at the primary level.
Inclusive Education Unit with the Teacher Education Division and Education Department. The special education policy was endorsed by the government in 1993, and in January 1994 it was then implemented by the department. At the time we had only about 8 special education resource centers incepted under the national education system. And then we had about 1,000 plus clients. And these are clients from the early age, early intervention, right after community-based rehabilitation programs. So they also service for adults as well. The role of the resource centers is to provide in-service training program to the field teachers out there, because the special education happened to be introduced in 1994 in the system. And there are thousands of teachers that are yet to be in service on this particular area. Because we've had children with special needs all along the classroom, but have gone unnoticed throughout the system. And since this came in, it's bringing awareness to the schools and even to the department. The resource centers cater for 3 major programs, which is the Early Childhood Intervention Program, with ages from 0 to 5, and then 6 to about 15 would be the integration program, where we integrate them into the mainstream schools. If we see that they're not able to compete in the mainstream schools, then the resource centers groom them, the independent living skills where they could cater for themselves at home as they grow up, and at the same time they train the parents or guidance on how to care for their family who's got a disability.
The United Nations has also seen it as a global issue and has therefore included it in the Human Rights Convention, recognizing the importance of principle and policy guidelines contained in the World Programme of Action concerning disabled persons in the Standard Rules on Equalization of Opportunities for Persons with Disabilities, in influencing the promotion, formulation, and evaluation of the policies, plans, programs, and action at the national, regional, and international levels to further equalize opportunities for persons with disabilities. You're with Olsem Wanem. Up next, the Cullen Services for Disabled Persons. This is Olsem Wanem, and if you've just joined us, we're discussing the national policy on disability in Papua New Guinea.
One of the contributing agencies which has worked towards the national policy is the Cullen Services for Disabled Persons. Established by Christian Brothers in 1991, the organisation has contributed immensely to the training of special education of teachers in Papua New Guinea, with 19 resource centres in 17 provinces, from Buka across to Wanem, down to Daru and as far as Alatau. Being the largest provider of disability training and services for the disabled of PNG, Cullen reflects on the rights of the person with disabilities as equal members of society. It focuses on education and training, addressing cultural issues, change mindsets, and onto grander goals like building codes and employment targets for persons with disabilities and impairments.
And we also deliver some skills in health screening for our community-based workers in the resource centres. So we screen for eye disease and eye disabilities, for ears screening and hearing analysis, and also run preventative programs, help the resource centre staff run preventative programs. And we do the same for physical disabilities and mental health as well. So overall, we're trying to ensure the whole community recognises the rights of people with disability, and that they can participate in education, social and cultural events and political events, and spiritual events, the same as anybody else in the country. But even beyond the rights, I think we're just reminding all of us, me and you and everyone, that people with disability are our brothers and sisters. I mean, the policy is under review, and it probably needs to, in relation to the Convention of the Rights with People with Disability being signed off, but I think it's a good policy because it does go from developing awareness in the community about some disabilities happen by accident and some by birth, and also that there are some disabilities that will repeat in families, and we need a lot of education about that.
Another organisation that assists in the disability sector is the St. John's School for the Blind, located at the St. John's headquarters in Port Moresby. Ruth Sangol is the director and trainer. She oversees the programs that are available to children and adults living with visual impairments or are fully blind. She gives an insight into what it's like to be a service provider in PNG and what her vision is for the continuous prevention and education, especially for affected. Her key message is education is empowerment.
Triple main program if I provide him long, help him all, especially all man special needs, one time eye problem, all like blind, or like pass. Long rehabilitation, education, prevention of blindness or primary eye care. Education got two component long end. Here by me looking close to inclusive preschool. Special needs children, one time all normal children, all school one time. It's a preparatory class where we are preparing children to be going inside long mainstream, to be integrated into the elementary school. So we are looking at like inclusive. We must not forget that the phrase, nothing about us without us. So where possible, we involve our people with disabilities inside the programs that we have so they can be able to say a plan and contribute to oh yes, this is the way we should be doing it, and they guide us through things, If you are doing it without them, it's not really that effective.
The PNG Assembly of Disabled Persons also plays a significant partner in the disability sector, translating the needs and providing the bridge between the policies and the people who deserve them most. Project Officer Ross Tito explains much of the same missions as all the organizations involved, which is through education comes empowerment. But this time, he reports on the changes he would like to see so that future policies automatically capture persons with disabilities. He explains that it is not to do with neglect, but more to do with perception. PNG Assembly of Disabled Persons wants to see the policy become more effective at the provincial levels, ensuring rights become real.
Western Highlands, for one, has a provincial policy on disability. Now, there is organic law that states that whatever is done at the national level can be deflected at the provincial level. So, in other words, our provincial governments are very much autonomous and they can decide what they want. So, the national policy is right at the national, but it cannot be deflected at the provincial level. So, I have visited 3 provinces so far. And the 3 provinces, all the provincial community development officers have said is, we've cited it, but we can't do much about it. So really that tells us that the provincial government would also have to be responsible for the disabled people right there, which means that they have to do their own provincial policies. But the word was align it with this one. Right now, SPSN has funded us to do 5 provinces on DPO development, and surely enough, down at the provincial level, disability has never been on the radar. So it's like they see disabled people in the provinces and they just help them on a very ad hoc basis. There's nothing meaningful, or even there's nothing to capture disabled people at all the provinces, I feel today.
You're with Olsem Wanem. When we come back, how 2 children from the same family are disabled and how their family members become their support system. This is Olsem Wanem. Being a carer for a person with disabilities is an act of selflessness, one of love and patience. This family share the plight of many others in that there should be more specialized facilities made available to assist their loved ones.
My name is Babani Abari. I come from Kila Kila village, and I'm a very unfortunate grandmother that has 2 disabled children from the same family. The work that we do every day in our home is a full-time commitment, meaning that the children have to have a shower
every morning and to be fed. We are the ones that feed them because they cannot feed themselves. Duchenne musculus. That's, yes, which means what the doctor said was, as he grows, his muscles will break down, and then gradually that will be the end of him.
Lo tupla boys lo me, maybe me been facing this problem sick blow I think almost 4 years now. Me na Mary blow me been struggle. Finding mean ways lo how lo me can look out him na support him tupla boys lo me pla.
Sometimes I sit down and talk Lord, why now? People are both moving the people's one would be okay. Like, the people's one would be okay for us. Why not? People one time. Every time I sit down and say, I wish there should be a new call where people are boys for me one day, ball player for about. Yeah, play one time with friends belong on.
Parents me plan no work now. It's hard lo me plus student. But I'm where na provide him lol can. So if government can lolo this land na, or second picnic can provide him free medical service lol no go physiotherapist, lo exercise more exercise na. Side lo marasin lo help him all because legally Wanem sa kiss him feeds too. So some side lo marasin kiss him free medication where Mipla can kiss him or go times where all schedule him all Mipla can kiss him all go need him all support or same kind.
3 months old, we began to realize that the head was growing. That's when we took him to the hospital, Combs Clinic, and they were thinking that he was going to be blind. So we went through all sort of tests, but eventually he was never blind. And he's been a neuro baby, but one of the healthiest babies in the clinic. But for the unfortunate part of it, he cannot walk, he cannot talk, but he understands everything that we say, so he does them.
I am Alma Wablo, and I'm from West Britain. I come from a mixed parentage. My mother is half Southern Highlands and Kerama. My dad's West Britain. I acquired my disability when I was 11 years old after falling from a coconut scraper that went through my at the back of my knee joint and out the artery, so there was no blood function. So in order to save my life, the doctors had to remove my leg. And growing up with my disability it was a big struggle for me because the school was not accessible, buildings were not accessible, and I struggled through. Despite that, my parents were very supportive. Today I'm working with the National Orthotic and Prosthetic Services as a prosthetist and orthotist. At the same time, I'm also coordinating wheelchair service provision and the Access to Mobility program that is funded by Olsem. In the field of prosthetics and orthotics, prosthetics simply, it's replacing the missing part of the body. For example, in my case, I was amputated through the knee joint. So then I need a prosthetic limb that replaces that missing part of my body, so it enables me to walk around, so I become more independent than using crutches where my hands are not free to move around. So in prosthetics, in orthotics it's a device that supports the weak part of the body. For example, someone who is affected by polio, and then that part of the body is weak, so we make a device that supports that weak part of the body to enable him to walk around, and he's independent also. I met this family through the research that I was working on under the Access to Mobility program. I went to Cheshire Homes to look for some clients to do research on, and I was sitting on the physiotherapist table, and then here comes this grandmother. And on her face, I saw that she was really sad. And she came and she said, "I'm looking for the clinic card of my grandchildren, my 2 grandsons." And I said, then I just listened. She said, my 2 grandchildren need wheelchairs. There's a lot of things under the policy that needs to be looked at, the 11 target areas. So especially to do with, service provision, like how we give services out, advocating and giving more awareness to let people know that there are services available.
Acquired this disability through polio. I have a weaker left lower limb. I acquired it when I was 2.5 years old. I have a bachelor's degree in business management. But previously I worked with the governor's office up at Goroka. I was the EO for the Provincial Disability Secretariat. Then I saw a lot of struggles because I was working closely with DPOs. So I saw the plight of people with disabilities right at the rural area, right down to the village. I think back in Goroka, it's more disability inclusive than in Mosby. But in the villages, that's where most people are. Bulk of the population is, and they don't have access to like basic health or education or that. For kids trying to go to school, the classrooms are not accessible, not just in the village, but at the provincial level too. See us as human beings first. You may see us as people with a disability, but that's just one part. We have 5 senses. That's just one sense, which is like disabled. Persistence, and perseverance. If you want something, you have to really fight for it. Don't, let. Sorry.
That's okay. Emotion works. People don't really understand if you use emotion.
Yep.
Take your time. I don't have a gun.
No, you don't. I always tell people that you want change, you have to start with yourself. So you change yourself, people around you will change also. Because we can do anything they can do, but just in a different way.
This is Olsem. Wanem. We'll be back with more after the break.
Ipul Powasel is the chairman for the PNG Assembly of Disabled Persons. She is also a ministerial advisor. As a child, she was affected by polio, which left her on crutches. Her parents thought the 2-kilometer journey to school would mean that at grade 6, Ipul would no longer attend school. However, Ipul proved everyone otherwise. Today, she is Dean of Women at the Pacific Adventist University and the driving force behind the country's efforts to ratify the UN Convention of Rights of People with Disability. She explains just how important awareness is, and aligning with the government's year of implementation, the policy presents a new era for citizens living with disabilities.
PNG has a national policy on disability, and it is up now for review. The policy is a good document. It outlines priority areas that the government of the day, or even PNG, can try to look at in terms of how do we address the issues of disability. And the policy was formulated using the Biwako Millennium Framework. The Biwako Millennium Framework calls for a barrier-free society where persons with disabilities can live in harmony and can live as equal citizens of a country. We are now faced up with other treaties and interventions that now will need to actually help us to formulate a policy that takes into account all these others. Millennium Development Goal, you have specific treaties and interventions for disability, the insurance strategy. The Biwako Millennium Framework was the strategy for the second decade of Asia Pacific. The insurance strategy is now the third decade strategy for Asia Pacific people with disabilities. And it calls for recognition of people with disabilities to be mainstreamed in the area of education, the area of access to health, economic empowerment, also political leadership as well. So in revising the new policy or the current policy, we really need to start to look at how we include all these other interventions. The Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability is the tool. It's a document that we would normally use. It's a duty of all. Disability now is changing. It's evolving. A lot of people now are acquiring disability later in life because of lifestyle diseases. And therefore, when we are talking about interventions for addressing issues of disability, we really need to look at it in this context as well.
The Department of Community and Development, especially the Disability and Elderly section, is now prepared to review the National Disability Policy.
There's so much happening in the country right now in terms of economic development, infrastructural development. So I'd like the government, the private sector, the service providers to include people with disabilities.
Consultations will commence this month, followed by the review on the 17th of July. The vision is to create a barrier-free, inclusive and rights society for persons with disabilities in the country. Acting Secretary Anna Solomon wants all government organizations, private sectors and the general public to include persons with impairments and disabilities in their plans. Although statistics are unavailable at this point in time, this group of people is much larger than you think. Impairments and disabilities not only occur from birth, but through injury or medical conditions, which can occur throughout the lifespan of any individual. If you are affected by any of the issues on tonight's program, please visit or call the department at Sambra Investment House, Waigani. They would like your input during the review process.
That's all we have time for on the show. A big thank you to those of you who have been watching tonight and online. Keep those comments and suggestions coming in to the address showing on your screen. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your viewing on MTV.